terra firma. The spread of the turkey around Europe quickly followed its introduction into Spain. William Strickland of East Yorkshire is said to be one of the first to introduce the turkey to England in the 1520s after a visit to the New World with John Cabot. He was apparently given a grant of arms, a family crest, that sported a turkey bird in its proper pride. According to Thomas Tusser's 1570 500 Points of Good Husbandry, turkey meat was now part of England's Christmas celebrations, at least for the well-off. Farmers from Norfolk would drive their turkey flocks to market in London on foot, about 80 miles distance, reportedly creating traffic jams on the street of the English capital. By 1541, eating turkey was so popular that when Thomas Cranmer, the Church of England's Archbishop, introduced a law to restrict the consumption of meat dishes by his underlings, turkey was first on the list. He said, of the greater fishes or fowls, there should be but one in a dish, such as crane, swan, turkey-cock, hadcock, pike, or tench. In Italy, the Venetian Senate passed similar laws, and turkey was outlawed, along with pigeon. Venetians appeared to continually evade the law and carved the birds in secret and made enormous pies with the meat. Well, the novelty of the turkey made them status symbols in Europe for the rich and famous. European nobility was fond of turning their estates into zoological extravaganzas and menageries where they would own all sorts of exotic animals. And they'd have exotic birds and beasts, especially when the Columbian Exchange is first kicking off in the early days of New World discovery. And everyone wanted a turkey, of course. What more exotic bird could you come up with, especially if you hadn't seen one before? And if you got tired of it or your turkey was too aggressive, you could butcher it and have a delicious meal. By the 1570s, the English are enjoying the North American bird at Christmas dinner. Shakespeare talked about it in Henry IV. And if we jump forward a couple centuries, Charles Dickens is talking about turkey with gravy in A Christmas Carol. Once Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday in the United States in 1863, turkey had become a staple of Christmas dinner and quickly became a Thanksgiving treat as well. So the turkey, as we can see over time, has had quite a varied reputation, from being thought as unintelligent to being thought of as courageous, from being a novelty to becoming so commonplace that you couldn't imagine not eating one on Thanksgiving Day. But it's also had a confusing history. Because it was a novelty, people didn't really understand its origins. I thought it was from India or the Orient when it was actually from the New World. The confusion of the origin of the turkey still exists, and it seems that every nation wants to claim that its origins come from some other nation that is exotic to that place. So in Arabic, the turkey is called the Ethiopian bird. The Portuguese call it the Peru bird, though there was never a turkey in Peru. In Greek, they call it the French girl, because the Greeks apparently got their first turkeys from the French. In Malaysia, a turkey is called a Dutch chicken, or ayam belanda, and the Dutch call it, like I said, the Calicut chicken, after the Southwest Indian seaport. So to close out this episode, let's take things full circle and go back to the first Thanksgiving and see how turkeys fit into it. Like I said earlier in this episode, they would have had more lobster and berries and flora and fauna that were native to the New World. But when the Pilgrims disembarked from the Mayflower in 1620, along with the livestock they brought with them from England, that included some domesticated turkeys they brought with them from England. When they stepped off the ship and they saw some of the wild fowl in the New World, they realized that their turkeys on board the Mayflower had come full circle. The native birds they saw in the New World were distant cousins of their own domestic turkeys they may have brought with them. Of all the famous stories of the Pilgrim Fathers, the most famous is that of their Thanksgiving dinner. Just about every American knows a story, but there's no evidence that turkey was on the menu with the first feast. Colonist Edward Winslow wrote, "Our harvest being gotten in, our governor set 4 men on fowling, that so we might after a special manner rejoice together, after we had gathered the fruits of our labors. They 4 in one day killed as much fowl as with a little help beside, served the company almost a week, at which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and amongst the rest, their greatest king, Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted, and they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor, and upon the captain and others. So there's no mention of turkeys, except in an account written years later by the governor, William Bradford, who doesn't make a specific connection between the turkey and the 1621 festivities. He wrote, "They began now to gather in ye small harvest they had, and to fit up their houses and dwellings against winter, being all well recovered in health and strength, and had all things in good plenty, for as some were thus employed in affairs abroad, others were exercised in fishing, about cod and bass and other fish, of which they took good store, of which every family had their portion. There was no want, and now began to come in store of fowl as winter approached, of which this place did abound when they came first. Besides waterfowl, there was a great store of wild turkeys, which they took many, along with venison, etc." So William Bradford says that he sent 4 men fowling to find food. Wow, say that 5 times fast. We don't know whether they returned with turkeys or not, but it sounds like in later years he said they did. Whether or not there was actually turkey eaten on the first Thanksgiving, we can see that no other bird was quite the globetrotter as the turkey is today, and just the name itself and its confused origins with the Middle Eastern country that it definitely was not from, and other languages that claim that the turkey is from Ethiopia, or India, or France, or the Netherlands, when it isn't from there. Shows you that the turkey is one of the most well-traveled and exotic birds, and we don't give it nearly enough credit. Well, that's all for this episode. Hope it was good food for thought as you're stuffing yourself with literal food. And I wish all the listeners, whether you're in the United States or not, a happy Thanksgiving.